Hello and welcome to the Sex and Healing Podcast. I am your host, Erin Kyna, and thank you so much for joining me as we take a wild ride together through the realms of sex and healing. Many of these episodes will have explicit content, which I rate not suitable for mum. So please bear that in mind when listening and be mindful of who else may hear the content as you're listening. So in today's episode, we are going to dive into why healing. So as an extension of episode 2, where we said, why sex? Why healing? Why is this podcast called Sex and Healing? So I have been intending to make a podcast for nearly 5 years. And the concept of that has been sitting there for a long time, but the evolution of it has changed so much, just like I have. And whatever I was thinking about creating 5 years ago, there is no way in hell it would fit who I am now. And because I was undergoing such rapid growth and healing in the last 5 years, nothing felt like it would stick. Nothing that I wanted to create was staying around long enough for me to actually put the energy behind it and build it into something. So I'm also grateful that it didn't come in the last 5 years. I feel so connected to the truth of who I am now. I have such a solid sense of self and understanding of who I am and what I'm here to do. And it feels like now is the most authentic expression on a podcast I would ever have. So it's all perfect. It is all in divine alignment and divine timing. So I hold no judgment towards myself. I can laugh at the fact that I've been talking about it for 5 years, and I'm going to celebrate the fact that we're finally here. So healing is a very interesting concept. And healing essentially means repair. But when we talk about healing in the context that I'm talking about healing, we're talking about anything that helps us reclaim our power. So we will look at physical healing, emotional healing, mental healing, spiritual healing. We'll talk about the healings that I do as a healer. We will talk about the healings that I receive as a client. We will talk about experiences that are inherently healing, like my sexuality or certain friendships or who knows, anything and everything. But when I look back in my life, I always knew that I was a healer. So this is very interesting. As a child, I wanted to be a nun, even though I was born into a family of atheists and generation after generation after generation of scientists, where God was a bad word. And no one on either my mum's side of the family or my dad's side of the family, no one was connected to God in any kind of way. And I was like, I want to be a nun. I want to go live in a convent. Someone take me to Sunday school. So before anyone could tell me anything about myself, I was spiritual. So my healing is very, very tied into my spiritual connection. But I wanted to be a nun. I wanted to also be the woman on Wheel of Fortune who spun the letters around, which I think is quite funny now. Also in BDSM, there is a kink called objectification. When you think about the woman that just gets all dressed up, stands on the side of stage, she's being objectified as a woman. So there was the desire for that also. The glamour, the femininity of it, the being the star and being in the spotlight. And I remember having some childhood dress up thing in primary school where I dressed up as a fortune teller. And I made this little teepee out of a sheet and would invite people into my crystal ball and my tarot cards and read their future. So I knew who I was at a very young age, as we all do. I really encourage you to self-reflect on that and think about what qualities were present in you before the world told you who you needed to be or what you should grow up as or what our family's always done. All those messages come in and they take us away from the truth of who we are, away from that essence. But it was evident for me from a young age that I was a healer. I've always been a caretaker. I have always loved to take care of people. I just wasn't sure in which way. So when I first left high school, I started working in a pharmacy, and it was through pharmacy that I found out about the natural supplements, and then going to do a course to deepen my knowledge on natural supplements and loving it so much. And a girl in my pharmacy said, maybe you should study naturopathy. And it was like this light bulb going on in my head, like, oh my God, you could turn this into a career. I'd never really thought about these things because I was raised in a family of scientists, and you just go to university and you study science and there's no ifs, buts and whats about it. But I actually started going to university and then fucking hated it and was too afraid to tell my parents I hated it until the day after my university fees were due. And I finally had the courage to go home and say, I don't want to do this. And my parents were like, okay, but you must get a decent job. And so I carried what's in Australia is called a Hex Debt for that. I didn't have the fearlessness that I have now, to be truthful about who I am. I was scared to let down my parents because I wasn't going to be a scientist. And in fact, I was studying computer science and behavioral science, which I kind of laugh at in some ways, that I was studying IT because it seems so far from myself. But actually, I fucking love tech. It wasn't that far from myself. I am such a multifaceted and diverse and huge capacity person that there is a part of me that could be a tech person. Absolutely. And there's a part of me that could be a behavioral scientist and study psychology. Absolutely. And there is a part of me that could go to naturopathy and become a naturopath. Like, I can do all of it, but just because I can do everything doesn't mean I should. And this is something I've struggled with my whole life, is that I can do things better than most people can. So I hire someone to do my website and I think, fuck, I could have done that better. Or someone takes photos of me and I think, fuck, I could have taken that better if I could take photos of myself, which I do most of the time on selfies. But when other people take photos of me, I get frustrated because what I can see or the way that I want to execute it is different, and I can't find people that will match that. So I end up just doing everything myself, and then I burn out because I'm not doing that thing that truly I'm here on the planet to do. So I started studying naturopathy. Through experiencing naturopathy, I had to do an assignment on a different modality. I tried acupuncture. I fucking loved acupuncture, so I swapped to acupuncture, and then I became a drug addict. Whoops. Life went dark, so much pain, went off the rails, had fees to pay for that university that I didn't complete also. All of it was a necessary path, but as I came out the other side, I got a job. I started getting my life together. I fell in love with who then became my wife, and I became a flight attendant, and I absolutely loved my job as a flight attendant. I loved to serve in that way, and I loved to be a cabin supervisor and lead a team and have a great freaking time. And I really loved that job for 7 years. So healing kind of fell by the wayside, or this caretaker role, this healer role kind of fell by the wayside while I was following this other distinct part of my personality that I loved. And I got to travel and I got to adventure and I saw the world and I had great success. But it was through being a flight attendant that I met my first life coach. So I was living in London working for Virgin Atlantic at the time, and this new girl had started and we were boarding the aircraft together. And I said to her, what did you do before Virgin? And she said, oh, I was studying life coaching. And at this point in 2010, I had never heard of life coaching. And something inside me was ringing a bell like ding, 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 ding. You need that. And interestingly, the reason why I was in London at that time was because I had been chosen to be part of an exchange program between Virgin Australia and Virgin Atlantic, where they chose only 20 people to go and represent our airline and have this amazing experience in London. And when I was on drugs, which would have been the year I graduated from high school in 99, so it must have been around the year 2000, 2001. I'm partying all weekend, all week, nonstop. And I remember one weekend being out in this bar and talking to an Irish girl or an English girl, I think. And I said, oh, what do you do? And she said, oh, I work for Virgin Atlantic, but I'm here on exchange with Virgin Blue. And again, I heard this bell going off inside me, like, I'm going to do that. And at this point, I had no connection to the airlines. I couldn't hold down the job to save my life, but something inside me knew that that was for me. And then through working for the airline, another long convoluted story that was pretty magic, but not so relevant to now, so I won't share the story now. I end up on this exchange program years and years and years and years later. And I'm like, I knew this was for me. I just knew this was for me. And in the same way, I'm standing there on that aircraft at the L4 and L5 doors, boarding a flight to Barbados. And I say to this girl, what do you do? And she said, life coaching. And it was bing, 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 bing. That's for you. And so God bless Lydia was her name, my first coach. She gifted me with 3 months of free coaching. She just offered it to me. And it radically changed my life. I had seen a lot of psychologists and a lot of counselors in that time. You can imagine what it takes to go from being a drug addict to being very successful in a job, a lot of self-work. And so through that self-work, I'd been seeking healing, but nothing had ever really helped me thrive. Things that had helped me overcome the pain that made me be an addict. But like the idea of where you're aiming for in psychology and counseling, from what I can determine, is pretty average. It's not thriving as such. It's not taking your life from average to exceptional. It's taking your life from bad to average. So it has its place, and I don't regret that. And I don't have judgment for anyone else that uses psychology or counseling as a means for change. But what I found was that life coaching was the piece that took me from average, or maybe even above average. To be honest, I bought a home at 24. I had a successful marriage. I had a successful career. I was overachieving at work. I was having a great old time traveling the planet. I was experiencing all of these incredible privileges from my life, from choices that I had made, despite the fact that I came from a life when no one around me was doing that, and that no one else was thriving, and that I'd had these childhood traumas, and I'd become a drug addict, and still I had worked on myself enough to get to that place. But I knew deep inside that that wasn't it, that there was so much more. I knew that I could be happier. I knew that I could be more confident. At that point, I still thought I was so fat. I had this like incredibly limiting belief that I was too fat, and it was so preoccupying my mind. And that was the thing actually that Lydia helped me see. She started to create a crack in that belief system where I started recognizing, like, what could it be that I'm not too fat? Could it possibly be that I'm not fat? But that would mean that my brain is lying to me, and what my brain is telling me isn't real. And that freaked me out so much. That rocks the earth beneath your feet, to think, fuck, if my brain has been lying to me this whole time about that, what else is my brain telling me that is not real? Like, what the fuck is reality? The first time that starts to happen for you in a distinct way is scary as fuck. But she was an amazing coach, and what she helped me create in those 12 weeks with her was transformational. And I thought, I was heading home back to Australia at this point, and I was thinking, I'm going to study life coaching. No one I knew in Australia knew what life coaching was. No one in Australia knew that had a life coach. Like, everyone's like, what is that? What is that? What is that? And I had all these limiting beliefs of like, how can I start a life coaching practice when no one knows what it is? And my best friend at the time had said to me, but Erin, that is an untapped market. That is such a great place to be. And so after getting home from London, I found that I wasn't satisfied flying domestically anymore. At what I would define now, it was Spirit was trying to push me out the door. Spirit was trying to guide me and lead me into what was next. But I, at that point, still had a lot of fear. I had fear that what if I don't find another job I'm as good at, because all my past employment experiences I got fired from. This is the only job I've done well at. What about all of my friends? What about this? What about that? What about my financial security? What about my mortgage? You know, very common belief systems for people who want to take action and take the leap and follow their spiritual path. All those beliefs came up, and I was petrified. And yet still, I feel this force pushing me in a direction, and I'm fucking petrified, and I stick my little heels in, and I want to have a tantrum again. I don't want to do it, but Spirit has this way. So I eventually resigned from Virgin, and I have a part-time job at a yoga and Pilates studio, and I'm going to start building this life coaching practice. And so actually, I've missed a very important point here. I didn't speak to Lydia for a while, and she reached out to me one year and said, or maybe at the end of the year, hey, let's catch up. We haven't spoken in ages. And so I catch up with Lydia, and I say, what are you doing? She's like, oh, I've left Virgin. And I was like, what? Wow. So it was almost like she put the light on for me. And then shortly after, I left Virgin. And then a year later, she messages me and she says, let's catch up for Christmas. And I was like, what are you doing now? And she said, I'm a full-time life coach living in Ibiza. And she said that to me that day on the aircraft when I first met her. Her dream is to be a full-time life coach living in Ibiza. And I was like, oh my God, babe, you've done it. You're living the dream. And she said, yes. And what would it take for Erin Kyna to be a full-time life coach by February? And this was Christmas time. So it was like 6 weeks. And I was like, ah. I was like, oh my God, all the fear again. Like, it takes so long to build a business. It's a blah, 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 limitation, limitation, limitation. And would you believe it? I built a full-time coaching practice, and I resigned from that job on the 28th of January. And again, Spirit was making Lydia say that to me. Spirit was pushing me out of that other job in that way. Like, everything was lined up. And in fact, when I went to write that resignation letter from that job to go full-time on my own, and I'm fucking petrified because there's no entrepreneurs in my family. There's no one that's demonstrated this. It was just get a decent job and save for the rest of your life, and that's it. So I'm freaking petrified. I write my resignation letter. I call my partner. I say, can I read this to you? And just as I'm about to read the letter, Hallelujah came on the radio. And that song has been pivotal for me in so many ways at different times in my life. And I just knew that Spirit was like, fuck, finally she's listening. Finally, she's doing what we've been asking her to do. And so my coaching business just took off. I was in this fantastic position, helping so many clients, having a great position in society, in my local community in Melbourne, being very well respected. Started doing yoga teacher training, meditation teaching, became a Lululemon ambassador, made my meditations were featured on Virgin Australia. Like all of these like amazing things were happening effortlessly for me. And I really was just stepping into my role again as healer. Like this is who I was here to be on the planet. But I still had a whole heap of stuff underneath that I needed to deal with, and part of my body type. So we'll be talking about epigenetics in many, many, many episodes. And in fact, I'll do a whole episode about epigenetics, so you know what I'm talking about. But when I'm referring to my body type, I'm talking about what this unique body that my soul has chosen to occupy in this lifetime is built for, and what its gifts are. And actually, all of us have the ability to know exactly what our soul chose to do, come here on the planet and do what our purpose is by understanding our body. So my body type is the nurturer and the carer. It's very, very inherent for me and effortless for me to do that. But I also, as I said, can do everything. And I have got stuck so many times in my life doing the things that I shouldn't be doing just because I can do them. And I also need to be very mindful of my stress. So my body type is not built to deal with stress. And yet I was stressed most of my life. In Melbourne, I was running a full-time coaching practice. I was learning to teach yoga. I was teaching yoga. I was going months without a day off. It was so unhealthy. That was not Erin at the highest expression of Erin, but it was the best that I knew at that time. And the way that my mind is structured as a diplomat, so that's what I'm going to refer to my body type as a diplomat, is very defensive, extremely defensive. And so what can happen in diplomats is that in your little conscious mind's bubble, which is like the tip of the iceberg and the subconscious is much lower, in that little conscious bubble, you can tell yourself that you've got it all together. And look at me, I'm a very spiritual person and I've done the work and I know what consciousness is and I do yoga, therefore I must be spiritual. All these fucking stories, while the subconscious is messy as fuck and it's got it's full of wounding, it's full of past life experiences, it's full of complicated, conflicting belief systems, but you can keep out of that by your defense system. You can build this tough wall around your subconscious that no one's going to go near, and you can think that you know it all. So that's why I thought I was a spiritual person. And that's why I thought that I wasn't sexual, because I was too spiritual. And that's why I thought blah, blah, blah. But it turns out that they were all defense mechanisms for a lot of pain and a lot of stuff underneath that needed healing. And so as my marriage came towards an end in 2016, Spirit started guiding me towards Hawaii. And it scared the shit out of me, actually, because that was the strongest calling I had ever had. But when I look back, I knew that I was going to London. I knew that I was going to work for Virgin Atlantic. I knew when I came back from London that I had to live in that part of Melbourne. As a result of that, I became a Lululemon ambassador. Like, the calling had always been there. I just hadn't identified it as a calling. I just thought it was a bit of intuition or a bit of desire, really. But what I can see now is actually, no, Spirit was always guiding me. I just didn't know how to listen very well. And that's mainly because I had so much healing to do. So when these signs and synchronicities and all this Hawaii stuff starts popping up in my life, I'm fucking terrified. I remember one night sitting upright in my bed doing a meditation, and I heard the word surrender. And it was the most profound feeling of surrender inside of me. And I could see myself prostrated on the ground with my third eye on the ground and offering my life to God and saying, use me. Like, I surrender to you, whatever the plan is. And that, you start feeling the earth rumble beneath you again. You start to feel the foundation of your life shake, and you're fucking terrified because you don't know what this means. You know that things are going to change, but you have no idea what. So at the same time, I was doing a lot of work with Dr. Joe Dispenza and had been to numerous of his workshops around the world. Hawaii is starting to come in. My marriage is starting to dissolve. Everything's just like, this is like a huge life rupture. It is a massive awakening in my life, but you don't know that when you're standing there and it's all crumbling around you. It's fucking terrifying. But still, I have that courage inside of me, and I have that experience that every time that you've listened to Spirit, it's worked out. And so Hawaii was the biggest leap of faith that I had ever done. I walked away from my life. I walked away from my marriage. We'd sold the house. We'd You know, all of these signs of external success that society tells me are important for me to achieve, I was walking away from. And yet the 5-year journey that I have undergone since that time has been the most profound, amazing, rewarding, terrifying, challenging experience of my life. And it has made me who I am today. And I fucking love my life, and I fucking love who I am, and I love what I have to share. And I trust and follow spirit implicitly. So no doubt I'll be sharing plenty more with you about my Hawaii journey. But more importantly, we're going to be looking at what it is to heal. And to heal is to grow and to evolve and to overcome these limitations within ourselves, and to overcome our identities, or what we think we are, in order to discover who we really are. So you'll be coming on my healing journey and hearing about the healings that I experience with the people that I trust, and the people that show up in my life as healers who have no idea that they're healing me. And I will be sharing with you amazing experiences of the healings that I provide for others and for my clients, and the healing that I experience through my sexuality. But we will be diving into healing and all the beautiful, amazing, wonderful ways in which healing is available to us in any moment. And there was a time in my life where I was like, fuck, the healing, is it ever gonna stop? Like, fuck, I've been doing this for so long and it's just never ending, and there's just always more shit inside of myself, and I've always got more pain, I've always got more insecurities. I'm like, fuck. And you know what? It's never going to stop. It's never going to stop. We live in an ever expanding universe. We are ever expanding within ourselves. There is no limit in this infinite reality in which we live. So rather than thinking that we heal to a point that we stop, I was able to shift that and say, I'm going to embrace it. That's fucking awesome that this never stops. It is fucking amazing that we get to continue to heal, because every time we heal, we expand. And every time we expand, we get to experience more. And every time we expand, we're more unlimited than before. Like, why would we ever want to stop healing? Why would we ever want to stop that investigation into ourselves, and the healing and the peace and the relief that comes? And even in my relationship, I sometimes sit here, and now I don't have the conscious thought, it surely can't get better. Of course, it can. Everything can. But I sit here so content and so happy and mind blown with this relationship that's shown up in my life, that is a reflection of the healing that I've done, to be ready to receive and to contribute to something this amazing. And then out of nowhere, I get hit with the next wave of healing, the next wave of recognition of who I really am, or what I'm capable of, or a deeper understanding of who I am, or having him reach into my heart deeper than anyone has ever reached into my heart. And the pain that exists there from always feeling like no one has truly loved me, to being so met by someone who says, I want all of you, Erin, I want all of you. Like that, how could we want that to stop? That is the beauty of life. So I am an inherent healer. I am an inherent sexual woman. I fucking love to talk. I love to share. I love to teach. I love to entertain. I am the star turning the letters around on the wheel of fortune. I am revealing the truth to you guys, entertaining you guys with these wild, wild stories and adventures and sharings and teachings and interviews and experiences. And I'm so fucking grateful for it all. And I'm grateful for you, my beloved listener. I am so, so fucking grateful that you choose to listen to my voice in your ears, and that you give me your precious time to give me this space to be seen and to be heard. And I offer that to you too. We are in this together. Would love for you to share this with anyone that you think would love to come on the journey with us, because it's going to be wild. I love you. I love you. I love you. And I will see you in our next episode.